New details on the military's border mission, how troops at Camp Pendleton will be part of the president's plan. And the final days of the campaign, the candidates for governor talked to KPBS News about turnout as they try to get their supporters to the polls.
Survivors of domestic violence, what are you going to tell her? She came to you for help.
Cultural barriers can make it difficult for victims of domestic violence to come forward. See how a local nonprofit is working to help local immigrant communities.
This will be the first treatment, I think, that can actually reverse the symptoms.
And a medical breakthrough in San Diego may prove to be an effective treatment for Parkinson's disease. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. Marines from Camp Pendleton will be used in support roles at the border. This afternoon, the military announced 1,100 personnel at Camp Pendleton have been told to get ready. Those Marines are part of the engineering units that specialize in construction, but details of their job have not been announced. President Trump says he will use up to 15,000 military members to help prevent a group of Central American asylum seekers from entering the U.S. The candidates for governor started their final weekend of campaigning in San Diego. Republican candidate John Cox spent part of his day voting. He and his wife Sarah dropped off their ballots at the Registrar of Voters office in Kearney Mesa. Cox also held a rally this afternoon with congressional candidate Diane Harkey in Carlsbad. This morning, Democratic candidate Gavin Newsom wrapped up a statewide bus tour with a rally at San Diego State University. KPBS News talked with both candidates about their focus on voter turnout in the final days.
It's the great equalizer. I don't care how wealthy you are, successful you are, how much money you have or amassed, your title, your position. Your vote matters just as much as everybody else on Election Day.
I'm convinced that the people of this state are going to do the right thing. They're going to vote for something that they need to have changed. You know, they really absolutely want change.
About 1 in 5 young people cast a ballot in the last midterm. This year, a new survey shows that number could triple among 18 and 19-year-olds. KPBS education reporter Megan Burks spoke with some of those new voters about what's getting them to the polls.
The survey by the nonpartisan Education Week Research Center says gun violence is the top issue driving young people to the polls. That's true of Sarah Mickelson, but the senior at the Pacific Ridge School in Carlsbad says her family also plays a big role.
Something that my parents really emphasized, like my mom said, okay, you're 18 now, like you better register, you better make sure you vote on November 6th.
The survey shows suburban youth like Mickelson are more likely to vote than their urban peers. In City Heights, 18-year-old Halima Musa is the one helping her refugee parents vote.
Growing up in City Heights, I've seen like a lot of, it's a good place to live in, but it could be better. And we don't have the resources we need. And I understand that if we vote and we get like politicians to listen to us, we can get the resources we need.
Countywide, there are nearly 17,000 more youth registered to vote than in 2016. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
Next week, voters will decide whether to repeal last year's gas tax increase. As KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen reports, Prop 6 could impact major transportation projects, like one that got started today in North County.
Today's press event marks the latest phase of the North Coast Corridor program. In just a few days, crews will start work on adding 8 miles of carpool lanes to this section of I-5 between Carlsbad and Encinitas.
Caltrans is building a modern, multimodal, and responsible system to provide choices for commuters, visitors, and businesses for the region.
The North Coast Corridor project officially broke ground 2 years ago. The broader project also includes a bike and pedestrian path and double tracking of the rail corridor to allow for more public transit service. I asked Caltrans Director Lori Berman whether the new freeway lanes would actually reduce congestion, given that academic research shows freeway widenings usually just encourage more vehicle trips and congestion doesn't change.
Look, at express lanes will certainly move people more quickly and will cut down quite a bit. And our goal is to provide choices and to provide greater reliability. And so that's what we're hoping to do with the express lanes.
Now, most of the revenue for this project is coming from SB 1. That's last year's increase to the state gas tax. Of course, voters will be deciding whether to repeal that tax via Proposition 6 next Tuesday. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Millions of dollars have been spent on elections this year in San Diego County. Voters can usually figure out where that money comes from, but sometimes they can't. iNews Source reporter Jill Castellana tells us about this dark money and what it's all about.
The term dark money might sound complicated or mysterious, but it's actually pretty simple. It's money spent on political activities where the donor is hidden. Sheila Krumholz is the director of the Center for Responsive Politics, which follows the money in elections. She says more and more dark money is coming from limited liability companies.
So in a nutshell, dark money is money spent on political activities where the donor is hidden, cannot be seen. Most of the money has gone through nonprofits, but increasingly money is going through LLCs, which also need not disclose their donors.
LLCs usually don't have to file campaign reports, so most of the time when an LLC gives money to a political group, we don't know whose money it actually is. Locally, LLCs have spent more than $2.5 million in city and county elections since the start of 2017. Krumholz says hiding the source of campaign funds hurts our democracy.
We have a right to know, not only a right to know, but a need to know who the forces are at work behind the campaigns that are trying to persuade us.
To learn more about dark money, go to inewssource.org. For KPBS, I'm iNewsSource reporter Jill Castellano.
You can get ready for the election with the KPBS Voter Guide. We have a link right on our homepage. It's a partnership with Voters Edge California. You'll find all the information on the races and candidates right now at kpbs.org. Nationally, consumer confidence remains high ahead of the holiday shopping season, but locally, there's a slowdown in home sales. Earlier, I talked with SDSU marketing lecturer and Bottom Line Marketing co-founder Mira Kopik, who breaks it all down in our Friday business report. So, Miro, numbers came out this week that show home sales in San Diego County are down to levels we haven't seen since the Great Recession. Many experts are blaming a rise in mortgage interest rates. But what's the complete story?
Well, Ebony, in part that's true. Home sales were down 17%, which is the biggest number in the last 11 years for the month of September. The median home price dipped a little bit after reaching an all-time high in August. There's three real reasons why this is happening. Mortgage interest rates are an important one. In the last month alone, they've gone up about 1%. This means that it tacks on an extra $300 to $500 to the price of a monthly mortgage payment. That's a lot, especially for first-time home buyers. Secondly, the price of the rise in home prices have outpaced wages. So people just can't keep up in trying to buy a new home. And the third component is that in San Diego, our wages are relatively low. There was a report out last week about that, and what it says is that the average San Diegan requires almost 40% of their income to pay for all their home expenses. Only LA and San Francisco are higher. The rest of the country pays only 20% of their income in their home costs. So we really have to struggle, and I think that's why the home sales are starting to kind of peak.
So now that Halloween is behind us, a lot of people have their sights set on the next holidays, which of course are Thanksgiving and Christmas. And for Thanksgiving, for many people, that signals the time to do your holiday shopping for that Black Friday. So a new report came out that said that shoppers actually plan to spend less on gift giving and more on things like holiday parties. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it's interesting. Consumers are really confident. They're very excited about the holidays. There's two reports that came out, actually, one from the National Retail Federation and the one you're talking about from Deloitte. And they both say two things. Consumers are going to spend a lot more on gifts this year versus last year. over $720 billion in spending that's expected, over $1,000 of gift giving per consumer. And that's a fairly big increase. But where the spending is really going to go is in celebrations and entertainment. The Deloitte study says that that's going to grow by over 25%. People are feeling great. They are, the economy's doing well. In fact, in the Deloitte study, 3/4 of consumers said they expect the economy to stay the same or improve in 2019. So that gives a big context of why these consumers are excited. And at the same time, with the strong economy, you've got a handful of things like increasing wages and lower unemployment gives people the confidence that they could spend.
So we'll stop there on that positive note. Mira Kopik, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ebony.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, just 4 days until the midterm elections, new job numbers spell a strong economy. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
The Me Too movement led to women publicly sharing their experiences of sexual assault and harassment. KPBS reporter Tara Minto says despite this reckoning, cultural barriers keep women quiet in San Diego's immigrant communities. We want to warn you, this story discusses situations that may not be suitable for all viewers.
Shaima Solaka knows women in San Diego's Middle Eastern community who are abused by their husbands, but won't leave them. The hairstylist sees bruises on the hands and faces of some of her female clients. She urges them to go.
Love is respect. الحب هو الاحترام.
But their culture encourages them to stay.
The reason we need to empower ourselves because our families did not support us. They will tell us you need to stay with him, go back to him. We need to support and we need to empower ourselves.
She and other Arab women new to San Diego discuss the challenge at an East County nonprofit. The organization, Licensed to Freedom, offers support services but also outreach and prevention classes to help counter a culture that blames the abused and protects the abuser. Founder Delquaz Ahmed leads the sessions.
Survivors of domestic violence, what are you going to tell her? She came to you for help.
Ahmed said it took years for the community to just discuss the topic of domestic violence, but she now serves about 1,000 women, children, and even men each year through various programs. She suspects many victims she saw also experienced sexual assault.
Sometimes they say no. But I can read it in their heart and in their facial expression. It's them. But if they are not comfortable, I just move forward to another question.
She's now part of a collaborative focused specifically on reaching sexual violence victims, and it's seeing unexpected results. Advocates say this past year they had hoped to provide legal and support services to 40 victims who were assaulted by a non-intimate partner, such as a relative, employer, or stranger. But within the first 8 months, they heard from twice that many.
What that said is that the problem has not been addressed.
Ann Bautista runs the immigration clinic at the nonprofit Access, Inc. The organization focused for decades on domestic violence victims, but launched SAVE, or Sexual Assault Victim Empowerment Legal Network, when it realized many clients had also been violated sexually.
And it just goes to show that the less support you have, the less, knowledge you have about what protections are available to you, and having a good supportive network makes you more vulnerable to sexual assault.
The program takes a culturally sensitive approach to counter barriers that making victims silent. Access legal advocate Yolanda Torres Villa says each immigrant community rep holds regular workshops that bring mostly women together to talk about life. This creates a comfortable atmosphere that has led some in her group to open up.
One of them just say that she loved coming to the group because she felt safe and she felt empowered and she started sharing her experience that she didn't trust she didn't trust men and any men in her life because she was abused by her uncles.
Torres Villa represents the Latina and Mixtec communities, which includes a marginalized indigenous group in Mexico. Ahmed works with the Middle Eastern community, and others represent the African, Filipina, and Vietnamese populations. They each also serve at the network's walk-in legal clinics. So when a victim comes for help, someone is there who knows their language and how to ask about such a taboo topic.
I asked them, like, in your lifetime, have you ever been, like, touched or somebody made you feel uncomfortable? And that's when they say yes.
She says now she's often the first person many victims tell about their assaults, and the stories stick with her. She recalled one woman's experience of being raped by her father.
I was 9 years old. He was threatening that he was going to kill my mom and my brothers if I wouldn't go with him outside the storage room.
Torres Villa has a similar storage room at her home, and for a while couldn't bring herself to go in there.
Because I was scared that I would find her there, but it was like images coming to my head, like when they were like telling me all this stuff, like I will go home, I will drive home and I will cry it in my car.
She says it took a long time to accept she couldn't prevent what had happened to them in the past, but that she can help them now. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
This story is part of our Speak City Heights collaborative. You can find more stories at speakcityheights.org.
Election day is looming. A look at rent control, school bonds, and pot measures on the ballots, plus the political implications of negative ads and divisive rhetoric on immigration, the caravan, and suspicious packages. Join us for the KPBS Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
A San Diego researcher says she has found a way to reverse the debilitating symptoms of Parkinson's disease. KPBS health reporter Susan Murphy talked to the researcher and two patients about the hopeful experiment.
Hey, puppy.
A walk in the park is exhausting for Chris Whitmer. The 58-year-old married father of two
You ready?
has Parkinson's disease.
Outwardly, you probably notice the tremor the most. You know, the shaking, the stiffness, or how somebody walks. Dawson, here.
Less visible are balance issues and slower movements.
The biggest thing I feel is the fatigue. I mean, it just makes you extremely tired.
Over the past dozen years, his symptoms have progressed. The disease is not fatal, but can leave a person completely debilitated.
I don't want to think about what I'm going to be like, 10 years from now and what it's going to feel like. I want to be around for my kids. Excuse me.
The cells from his skin are his biggest hope. The former tech industry businessman is preparing to undergo a brain cell transplant as part of a first-of-its-kind clinical trial.
I think it's going to be the first successful treatment of Parkinson's, because everything we've done to now with drugs and therapies and deep brain stimulation and everything that you have for Parkinson's just treats the symptoms.
If all goes well, his health will be restored within months.
This will be the first treatment, I think, that can actually reverse the symptoms.
Parkinson's kills brain cells that make a substance called dopamine. Dopamine allows nerve cells to communicate with muscles.
It's reasonable hope right now.
Stem cell scientist Jean Loring with Scripps Research Institute in La Jolla has found a way to replace the lost nerve cells. It starts with taking a small skin biopsy from a patient's arm. The skin cells are transformed into master cells called pluripotent stem cells. They can make any cell or tissue in the body, including neurons. They can also regenerate themselves.
The reason that pluripotent stem cells are so important is that unlike the stem cells that are living in your body right now, they're cells that can regenerate certain parts of your body, not very well. These cells can make every cell type in the body, including nerve cells.
Loring has mastered the procedure of turning pluripotent stem cells into dopamine neurons. Other researchers are trying a similar approach, but they're using embryonic stem cells or other cells that are not from the patient.
Once we show that this works in our small first group of patients, then we will negotiate with the FDA to expand it to a large number of patients, multiple sites.
Loring's experiment is more than 5 years in the making. It's been successfully tested in animals. Getting her research to a potential clinical trial has involved climbing mountains for fundraising, opening a new lab in Torrey Pines to reduce overhead costs, and starting a foundation to secure grants and donations.
There's just no doubt in my mind. It's it's the answer.
Jennifer Robb is president of the Summit for Stem Cell Foundation. It was created in 2011 to back the project with the collaboration of patients, researchers, and donors.
It's going to be super exciting to have an answer for the outcry of 7 to 10 million people worldwide. You know, an answer for their cry for help.
And Rob's cry for help. The 60-year-old married mother of 5 with 2 grandchildren is also a Parkinson's patient, diagnosed 12 years ago. She's also a clinical trial participant.
You find yourself slowing down to the point of not being able to move at all.
But she's filled with hope that she'll soon be able to enjoy life's simple pleasures once again.
Playing with my grandkids and working in the yard. Sorry.
The project has drawn interest from other top research institutes in San Diego County because if it's successful, it could also potentially treat multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's, and other neurological disorders that currently have no cure.
As a scientist who tends to root myself in skepticism and careful observation, I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm extremely hopeful and I really want it to work.
Stephen Wilson is Executive Vice President of the La Jolla Institute of Allergy and Immunology. The biomedical research facility is focused on preventing disease through a better understanding of the immune system. Wilson's team is studying the immune response of Parkinson's. He recently reviewed Loring's research and visited her lab.
Great science loves great scientist neighbors. There are pieces that your work is going to explain, and then gaps that you're hoping that in parallel someone else can factor.
Wilson says this could move the needle of scientific discovery.
There are some great treatments. There's a lot of trials in all these different areas, but this is one of those big ones where it could just suddenly change it for the better.
Stay.
Chris Whitmer is hoping his walk in life will get easier, because if it does, others with Parkinson's could follow in his footsteps. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
San Diego will continue to see dry and warm weather throughout the weekend. Dajia Swad has details in tonight's forecast.
Still going to be pretty quiet tonight here across much of Southern California. To the north is where we have a bit more activity, but not really going to be diving in towards LA nor San Diego. We'll see mainly clear conditions for Oceanside with a low of 50, a few clouds, and towards Borrego Springs with low 58 and cooling down to 47 in Mount Laguna. Here in San Diego tonight, it is clear with a low of 63 degrees, just a few clouds here and there, but overall moonlit skies remain in that dry and clear zone here for much of Southern California due to an offshore flow. To the north is where we have that cooler air and even some snow getting going in towards Colorado. But for us, maintaining that sunshine here in Oceanside with a high of 78 for your Saturday, 91 in Borrego Springs, and 69 in Mount Laguna, topping off at 77 for San Diego. Early week, not much changing either, except we'll be noticing that offshore flow turning into an onshore flow, and that means temperatures will be cooling down. So in the upper 70s here on the coast as we head into the weekend, then by early to midweek, temperatures drop down into the lower 70s. We'll also see that same cooling trend Tuesday and Wednesday. Inland be topping off at 77 for your Tuesday. Inland mountains into the lower 60s, but keeping that sunshine, and we'll also see that sun and cooler air in towards the deserts. No longer going to be in the 90s as we head into your Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, but keeping the sun but strong here across much of Southern California. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your AccuWeather meteorologist, Dajia Swad. Back to you.
A horror remake and a rock and roll biopic debut in theaters this weekend. Here with the reviews from KPBS Cinema Junkie is Beth Accomando.
Bohemian Rhapsody is essentially a celebration of the music Queen and Freddie Mercury created in the 1980s.
Imagine thousands of people doing this in unison. Huh? Well, what's the lyric?
The film is like attending a Queen concert with occasional scenes of backstage drama interspersed between songs. If you love Queen, you'll enjoy this tribute. But the film provides little insight into Mercury's life and only an occasional glimpse into the creative process. Innovation, audacity, and originality defined Queen's music. But these are not the qualities that describe the film. Bohemian Rhapsody succeeds only as a cinematic reminder of how much joy Queen's music still brings to audiences. In 1977, Dario Argento shocked and delighted audiences with Suspiria, an iconic entry in Italian horror set in an all-girls dance school where violence erupts. Now, a remake by fellow Italian Luca Guadagnino hits theaters.
I want to start work on a new piece, a piece about rebirths.
To its credit, the remake divorces itself enough from the original to be judged on its own terms. Witches and dance play a bigger role, and Tilda Swinton is a riveting centerpiece. There are a number of things to admire in the film, but it overextends its welcome at 2.5 hours, especially since it could have done without its odd turn at the end. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.